watch Anthony Adams. We, Detroit. We deserve better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. And live stream on Facebook. We, Detroit. We deserve better.
Good morning, Detroit. This is Anthony Adams of the We Detroit, We Deserve Better show. A show where I discuss topics of interest to me and hopefully of topics of interest to you. When I normally come in, I have kind of a prepared script about what I want to talk about, but today I'm gonna go freestyle, as they say. I'm going to touch upon a number of different issues that have occurred in the city over the last year, and hopefully you have the opportunity to call in and provide question, comment, or context. Our call-in numbers for today's show is 313-868-4336, 313-868-0351, and 313-868-0342. So, I also want to give a shout out really to brother R.J. Watkins. You know, when you're in the communication space, when you're battling with giants, Comcast, and all the big stations out there, there's something to be said about the longevity of the brother, his commitment to the community. And so I'm happy to have a platform on his show because it gives me the opportunity to speak with you in an unfettered fashion. So I also want to give a shout out to R.J. Watkins and to the wonderful support staff that makes up this organization. It's always nice to come in, to have a pleasant word and a smile, a nice little boost to get your show going. And so I also want to give my shout out to the staff here at the station. So, what's been going on in the city of Detroit? Well, last week was a very interesting week in the city. There was a situation at a party store over on Coyle and Puritan where a young lady who apparently, as the story was told, was standing outside the store and panhandling, asking people for money. Apparently, the owner of the store just got really pissed off about her being outside, and then he physically dragged her into the store. That's right. She was outside the store. He physically drug her into the store and then proceeded to beat her down in a fashion that left her bloodied and bruised. When I got up the following morning, I was looking at Facebook, and you know, people send out these Facebook alerts. And I saw this young lady in the store, sitting on the floor, bloody mouth, some sisters giving her some aid and comfort. And I was like, man, this is absolutely crazy. Is this type of conduct going on in the city of Detroit? And far too often, I have to say, yes, it goes on in the city of Detroit. And so me, along with a group of other, I'm going to say, committed activists, showed up at that store the following day and shut it down. As a brother say on the street, we shut it down to demand justice. We shut it down to demand that somehow or another that the police department and the prosecutor's office take necessary steps to ensure that these types of situations don't occur in our city. There were a lot of things to unwrap about this scenario. The first thing I wanted to try to figure out was if, in fact, there was an assault that actually occurred, then why, when the police came, was no one arrested? Well, you know, the story is that if a brother and a sister are in their home and there's some evidence of domestic violence that's taken place, the police have no hesitancy in taking one or, if not both parties, to jail. And so here we had clearly a physical assault which left a woman bloodied and sitting on the floor of a store. And yet when the police came to the call, there was no one that was arrested. There was nothing done. And I was really upset about that because I know that in most situations, if the party store owner had been attacked by a customer, I have to believe that the customer would have been taken to jail and things would have been sorted out at the police station. So why was there not action taking place with respect to the store owner on the date in question? Even if you had some ambiguity about what occurred there, it would seem that the normal course of conduct would have been for all parties to have been taken to the police station and had the matter sorted out. And yet there was no action taken. And I guess after subsequent investigation, it was determined that the store owner did in fact commit an assault. A warrant was issued for his arrest as authorized by the prosecutor. And so that whole thing is going to really play out. But what was also interesting about that scenario was that the news reporter who covered the story took the opportunity to kind of go around the community and talk with people about the store owner. And there seemed to be some comment that, well, this is quite unlike the store owner, that, he was well known in the community for extending credit to people, and that it was just sort of out of character. So it was almost taken as a one-off situation. But there can never be a one-off situation when there's violence against a black woman. Let me say that one more time. There can never be a one-off situation where there is violence against a black woman. And in this particular situation, a woman who was left bloodied and bruised sitting on the floor in the store. And so for those who want to excuse his conduct as a result of it being a one-off, I would say, shame on you. Because part of our problem in our own community is that we continue to give people excuses. And then I understand that there apparently was a barbecue that was being hosted by the store owner with people from the community, where they were really being very supportive of this store owner. Now, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that because on the face of the activist community showing up to shut his store down because of his conduct, in the face of that activism, there were certain portions of the community which felt the need to support this store owner and his conduct. And maybe they weren't necessarily supporting his conduct, but they were supporting him. But I don't know how you can separate the two. Where you have a situation where you have violence against a black woman, and it's all too common in a lot of these stores, there's something that we have to take issue with, and we've got to address that in a very, very, very aggressive manner. And so there was some talk for some members of the activist community that, we're tired of dealing with this type of conduct, then we need to put up our money and create stores that were run and owned by people like us who would be sympathetic and empathetic to the community. So that's something that, we obviously want to keep our eye on as it moves through the criminal justice process, because there are some interesting issues of race and class involved in all of this. And so it's something that we really need to take a look at. I think another situation that occurred this weekend was the tragic death of a 9-year-old boy who was riding an ATV and was struck by a Charger that was driving at apparently a high rate of speed. Well, if you've ever driven through the city of Detroit at any point day and night, we see these folks in these Chargers, and they're driving crazy fast in the city of Detroit. And I'm concerned about that because it's creating a public health issue with respect to our young people being able to ride their bikes, or in this case, an ATV. And there's another point of that I really want to talk about. How are we to govern the conduct of ourselves in our own city where people are taking it in their own hands to drive as though they're on the Indianapolis 500? I am very concerned about the safety of our community and people who choose to drive at reckless speeds. Let me be clear. I think we need to have a zero policy on fast driving in the city of Detroit. I was riding my bike one day down Houston Whittier, and I'm trying to keep myself, on the sidewalks or in the little street, the little lane that they have for bikes. And I hear a car coming up behind me, and if this car wasn't doing 100 miles an hour, I would be surprised. He was gunning the engine, driving as fast as he could, through a residential community with no regard for the safety of the people who live in the community. Now, I think it's wonderful that you can afford to buy yourself a nice Charger with a Hemi engine and 450, 550 horsepower. But when we're talking about driving through the city of Detroit at speeds that are crazy and jeopardizing and hitting our young people and folk being killed, that's something that I can't agree with. I understand the culture. I don't understand the climate that we've created in our own city where people believe that they can drive any which way at any rate of speed, gunning their engines and doing things that are really putting people in harm's way. And so we've really got to begin to take a good look at why that's occurring, why there is no alternative place for people to drive their cars fast. Why have we not created some type of speedway environment where people can actually drive as fast as they want around a track? With the number of people that are driving fast throughout the city and the number of car clubs in the city, I have to believe that we can create a safe space and environment for our young people who want to drive fast and some of our old people who want to drive fast, and put them in an environment that is safe, that allows for folk to do things in the appropriate manner, that takes this type of traffic out of the community and puts it in a place in an industrial area where these types of things can be done in a safe and secure manner. And so, I mean, these are issues that bother me, because it's more of a reflection on who we are in our community and what value systems we portray. If we believe that it's okay to drive fast in the city, then that's not really creating the right environment that we need for ourselves. And we've got to begin to understand that what we're doing is we're hurting ourselves long term. We're creating an environment where people can't sit on their porches because people are flying down the streets. Our young kids can't ride their bikes safely in the streets on the sidewalks because people are driving crazy with no regard for the health and safety of people here in the city of Detroit. And so we've got to take a good look at that. We've got to create safe spaces for ourselves so that we can allow our young people to do things that I wouldn't necessarily do. Now, let me just be clear. I have gotten my fair share of speeding tickets in the city of Detroit and on the highways. But it's been on a highway. It's not been going down a residential street. And so, I mean, maybe I'm trying to justify, speeding, being in a hurry. I really can't justify it. But at the end of the day, we need to create safe spaces and environments for ourselves so that we can do what we need to do safely. And so when we come back from our break, I'm going to really touch upon the situation with the young boy who was killed riding the ATV. His relative age and things of that nature, I think, need to be talked about. And so when we come back from our break, we're going to spend a little more time kind of really trying to dig deeper and deeper into this issue and culture of speed and speed kills in the city of Detroit. So we'll be right back.
Watch Anthony Adams, We Detroit. We deserve better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. And live stream on Facebook. We Detroit. We deserve better.
It's time for your company to make the next big step. Hire a knowledgeable, experienced, and connected firm. Mario Morrow and Associates is a trusted media and public relations firm. We understand your vision and your industry. We'll provide strategic marketing, digital and social media, image building, and reputation management. Contact Mario Morrow and Associates, where success rules and results matter. Learn more at mariomorrow.com.
If you need a car today, use credit, bruise credit, or in need of a financial miracle, my name is Mr. Green, the Financing King. Got a small down payment and proof of income. You can drive away today in a new or pre-owned car, truck, or SUV. Call me, Mr. Green, 313-350-4188. I have over 35 years of experience and an unlimited selection of reliable, certified vehicles. Call Mr. Green, the Financing King, 313-350-4188.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri, encouraging all taxpayers to please take advantage of the several payment options available.
You can pay online by visiting the Wayne County Treasurer's Office website. Paying online is easy and convenient.
You can also download the mobile app and pay with your smartphone.
You can pay at one of 70 kiosks located throughout Wayne County.
And yes, you can always still send in your payments using the U.S. Postal Service.
If you have to visit our office in person, you must make an appointment by going to treasurer.waynecounty.com. It only takes a few minutes. Facial covering or mask is required and social distancing is observed. Your health and safety is very important to us. You can also email our office at taxinfo@waynecounty.com or call us at 313-224-5990.
Watch Anthony Adams. We, Detroit. We deserve better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. And live stream on Facebook. We, Detroit. We deserve better.
Welcome back. My name is Anthony Adams of the We Detroit, We Deserve Better show, a program where I talk about topics of interest to me and hopefully topics of interest to you. I also want to remind you that our call-in number is our 313-868-0342. That's 313-868-0351 and 313-868-0342. And so when we left, I was kind of speaking about fast driving in the city of Detroit and the situation where the young man was killed this past weekend because a guy was apparently driving down the wrong street at a high rate of speed, hit a child and killed him dead on the scene. And so, first off, let me extend my condolences to the family of the young man that was lost. You know, having lost a child myself, there is no greater pain that a parent suffers when they've lost a child. And that's a really painful, hurtful, it really goes deep in your core. And so I want to extend my condolences to the family for his loss, because it's something that, you know, no parent should ever have to face. You know, but I did have a question regarding kind of the propriety of our young person, you know, riding an ATV, whether or not it was age appropriate. I know that was not the reason why he was killed, because a person driving down the wrong way of a street was the rationale for that, driving at a fast rate of speed. But you know, we have to be careful about putting our young people, you know, in situations where things like this could occur. And it really hurt me to hear about that, because I know that the pain that the parents are experiencing, feeling perhaps that they may be somewhat at fault for the death of their child. And so we just have to love them up. We have to pray for them, and we have to be very careful and cautious, because oftentimes I see a lot of young people engaging in conduct and activity that they really shouldn't be involved in. For example, the other day I'm riding down Dickerson over by Fruit, and I see a guy on a motor scooter, I guess is what these things are called, go-kart. No license tag, clearly no reflective lights, no type of safety equipment, and riding without a helmet. So you've got a kid in a car, a little car, a gas-powered car, going at a high rate of speed, totally disregarding the traffic lights and signals, not caring about anything. And I have to ask myself, you know, where are his parents? Where are the people who are responsible for him? Why are we not instilling the right values of safety for our young people to be riding the streets on motorized vehicles that are dangerous weapons? They could hurt somebody, and they also can be hurt themselves. And so then I guess the question that I begin to ask myself is, are parents really responsible for their children? Well, I have to answer that question in the affirmative, that parents continue to be responsible for the safety and security of their children and putting their children in positions where they don't necessarily hurt themselves or can harm themselves. We have a much greater responsibility to our young people in this community, especially given the number of outlets that they have. And maybe perhaps the issue is that we don't have enough safe spaces for our children to go-kart. That where are the old go-kart, you know, racetracks that we used to have around the city? Why do we not have more of those types of facilities that could allow our children to do things safely? Why are we not making more of an investment in our young people in our community and to provide them with what they need in order to do things safely, to understand what it takes to operate a go-kart, to understand how to safely drive a moped, I mean, these are things that we really need to be engaged in, because what we're doing is we're allowing our children to run wild in the streets without adult supervision, without the necessary safety protocols in place that were designed to protect everyone, the child as well as the adult themselves. And so we've got to begin to invest in safe places for our young people to do the things that young people do. And so whether it's riding up a dirt hill on a moped, then maybe we need to create more safe spaces like that. Whether it's creating a race kart a track for kids to learn how to operate mopeds and go-karts, then we need to do these types of things, because by not having these types of places, what we're doing is we're putting our broader community at risk, that our children can ride through the city in a go-kart without any reflective lights or equipment and put themselves in danger and possibly put someone else in danger. And so we've got to put and invest in the things that we need to keep our children safe. Providing them with the proper equipment, reflective lights on their go-karts, providing them with helmets so that they can have something that if in fact they are ejected from the vehicle, that at least their head, can be protected, and the injury itself may not be as hard because you've had some type of covering on yourself. To providing places where we can give our children proper supervision on things like how do you signal, how do you ride safely in traffic, how do you maneuver in the event that you are forced into an evasive operation. These are the kind of programs, the community things that we need to do, because we have to provide something safe for our people, our young people, to be involved in. We had structured activities when we were growing up. We could go to the Y, we could go to the boys club, we could go to the rec centers. We had a lot of structure within our day. So even if we weren't necessarily under the thumb of our parents, we had other adults who were responsible, that were looking out for us. And we also had the intergenerational communication with younger people who were younger than ourselves, older people that we could talk with and learn things from. And so all I'm saying is that if we don't invest in these types of facilities and provide the safe spaces and provide the training, then what we'll continue to get is what we see, which are people riding through our city at high rates of speed, disregarding traffic signals, jeopardizing and putting people's lives at risk. We've got to change the culture of driving in the city. And changing the culture starts with changing the mindsets of our young people who want to drive go-karts and race karts and mopeds and all these little things that they do, and provide them with the security and safety so that they can understand how to do these things safely. I think if we approach it from that perspective and provide what our people need, we will create a much safer environment for ourselves in our own city. And so we won't have our seniors complaining that they can't sit on the patio because guys are flying down the street, blasting the music. These are things that we have to discuss, because if we don't discuss them, if we don't understand them, if we don't address them, then we continue to have a much difficult climate and environment for ourselves in our own city. And so then I guess that begs the question, are we responsible for our own conduct? That's a loaded question, because when we talk about responsibility, I was always taught that responsibility starts at home, that the values that I portray as a young man and as an adult are values that I learned in my own house. Now, I had the pleasure of having Juanita M. Adams as my mother, a woman who was committed, who was engaged, who was a community activist, who enjoyed being involved in activities, who enjoyed being involved in politics, who understood what personal responsibility was, because she was responsible for me. As a child of a single mother who worked, there were certain things that I had to do. For example, my mother always left out of the house before I did. But you can rest assured that when she left out the house, I didn't even think about getting back in bed, because I knew that if I didn't get my butt to school on time, I was going to have an issue with my mother. And so she instilled in me, the necessary amount of fear, because you got to have that little fear in there, And she was my friend, but she was my mother first. And so there were things that she taught me that I never questioned. I don't ever recall having but one argument with my mother in her entire lifetime. And the argument was kind of a silly argument based on how I felt she had treated my grandmother. It was crazy. But that was the only time I ever argued with my mother because she instilled in me sort of the values of respect, the values of decency, the value of honesty and integrity that I carry with me today. And I'm very happy that I was able to get those tools. But there are a lot of our young people, a lot of our children who don't get those tools. And then what is the broader responsibility of the community to accept the challenge of helping out kids that are not in great environments? What is our responsibility? We all can recall stories. Or we had friends who maybe didn't necessarily have a lot to eat in their homes, or maybe they had very big families and they always kind of hung around your house around dinner time. But we know why they did that. But in those days, back when, kids got fed, because I think parents understood the broader responsibility that this child is here, this child is in need, and we need to provide them with a safety net of support so that they don't go home hungry. And even though it may have been an inconvenience, you never knew it, because my mother, as did many others, did it with a grace and dignity that belied who they were as people. And so when we come back, from our break, we're going to dig a little more deeper into this notion of personal responsibility, because I think it's something that we really need to understand. Who is responsible for what? Are we responsible for black-on-black crime in our community? Are we responsible for dealing with intergenerational poverty? Are we responsible for educating our own children? These are questions that we're gonna challenge when we come back from our break. So I'm Anthony Adams. This is the We Detroit, We Deserve Better show, and we'll be right back.
Watch Anthony Adams, We Detroit, We Deserve Better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. And live stream on Facebook. We Detroit. We deserve better.
Hi, excuse me, do you have anything for paint?
Straight down that aisle there.
All right, thank you.
Young lady, this here's what you need.
Ringmaster?
Mm-hmm. Ringmaster rubbing oil. Mm-hmm.
How does it work?
By promoting circulation since 1950. Massage it in for best results.
Ringmaster took care of my back pain.
Ringmaster got rid of my knee pain, too.
Wow, it sounds like I'm late to the party. I'll take one.
Find Ringmaster at CVS, Davis Drugs, and other fine stores.
Your radio is now on TV. Your TV is now on radio. WHPR 88.1 FM can now be heard and seen worldwide. The same platform that hosts all of your favorite content now has WHPR TV and radio. Have your own radio or TV show on Roku with approximately 8 million homes, starting as low as $50. Debut your music video, clothing line, church ministry, plays, or products. A limited number of slots are available, so act now. For more information, visit RokuDetroit.com or call 313-868-6612. You heard about it. Now come be a part of it. Roku Detroit Worldwide. Approximately 8 million viewers.
Shelley Books and More. Short stories, poetry, and art contests for the youth. Cash prizes, $300 to $500 plus prizes. No entry fee. Go to ShelleyBooksandMore.com. Contact Shelley at 313-778-8009. Submit entries now and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Shelley Books and More. Also, listen to Shelley Books and More every other Tuesday, 4 p.m. on FM 88.1 WHPR. Radio we can see.
Watch Anthony Adams, We Detroit. We deserve better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. and live stream on Facebook. We, Detroit. We deserve better.
Welcome back. My name is Anthony Adams of the We Detroit, We Deserve Better show, a show where I speak about topics of interest to me and hopefully topics of interest to you. Today, my topic is personal responsibility. Who is responsible for what? When I left at the station break, I kind of laid out issues of, who's responsible for education in our community, who's responsible for crime, who's responsible for disciplining our children. And so I want to take this next segment to kind of dig deeper into those issues. So when we talk about the issue, for example, of who is responsible for educating our children, I always start with one basic premise, that the best place you possibly can learn anything is in your own home. But that being said, we all know that everybody's home are different. That people have different needs, they have different concerns, they have different pressures that are associated, with life in the family. And so I have to wonder, when we talk about who's responsible for educating our children, well, clearly there's a certain level of responsibility that is given to the parents to ensure that the child is able to learn. Now, when I was growing up, my mother worked hard, a long day, but when she came home from work, the first thing she did was she made me pull out my reading book, and she would have me sit at the kitchen table, and she would have me reading aloud whatever my assignment was. And what she would do during the course of my reading, she would ask me questions about, well, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? What does the context of this sentence mean? How do you really understand what's going on when you read something? She asked me a lot of probing questions to really stimulate, my mind, to get me to actually thinking about what I was reading. Because reading isn't just about reading the words, it's also about understanding the meaning of the words. It's about understanding the context of the words. It's about understanding the time period in which a book or word was written. It gives you a much broader sense of appreciation and really expands your knowledge and understanding. So that when I went to school, I kind of had a leg up on a lot of kids who didn't have that, because my mother was engaged with me as a child and trying to make sure that I had the tools necessary to survive in life. But not all kids get that same situation. Unfortunately, a lot of kids don't get that situation. And so they come to school kind of not as prepared as they should be. But this doesn't negate the fact that they still have the ability to learn. So if in fact the parent is not doing what they're supposed to do in order to educate the child, then whose responsibility is it to educate that child? Well, clearly a lot of the responsibility flows through to the school system. And we've got to make sure that when our kids come to school and they are not necessarily prepared to learn, that we provide them with the support and tools necessary in order to enhance their learning experience. This is what requires, I think, an additional effort on the part of the schools, is to identify what the issues are with respect to the child. And you've got to have the resources to be able to do that. You've got to have the social workers and the counselors who can speak with the child, understand what his issues are, understand what his concerns are, and have a level of compassion for that child that you normally may not have when you're dealing with, 70, 80, 90 kids at one particular point in time. Because it is an obligation and a responsibility that if in fact you are in education, that you have to be an educator. You have to embrace education in all aspects of life. That you've got to understand that oftentimes you might be the last step between this child going in the wrong direction, or maybe moving in a direction which flowers and enhances their life. Again, I was fortunate because I had teachers who were inspiring educational leaders, teachers who wanted me to learn, and also my classmates to learn, who took an active interest in me. And some people would say, well, they took an active interest in you because you had a mother that was engaged in your education. But I would say, no, they took an active interest in a lot of kids, maybe kids whose parents were not as engaged as mine, because they took and understood the responsibility that the greatest one of the greatest resources we have that is undervalued are our educators. We don't lift our educators up enough, given what they have to deal with in the school environment. And in many situations, the environments are under-resourced. When we have children who come to school that are not as prepared to learn as they need to be, where are the wraparound services that we have to provide for our children so that they can learn? Because that is a responsibility for the teacher, for the principal, as well as the superintendent and the school board to provide our young people with the wraparound services that they need. So what happens in a situation where a child, gets these wraparound services, but they still have to return home to the same environment? I was recently speaking at a church event for young people, and some of the young people did not necessarily want to ask a question publicly, and so we gave them the opportunity to write questions down on a piece of paper. And one question struck me really hard. It was a young lady. I could tell by the handwriting. It was a young lady, and the question she posed to me was, what do you do in a situation where your home life is horrible? And that was the word that she used. She said her home life was horrible, that there were things that were going on in the house that were not conducive to learning, and yet she was struggling and trying to hold on to her education dream, because she understood at a very early age, and she was maybe 14 years old, that education was going to be her pathway out. But her environment at home was horrible. And I was really troubled by that statement. Troubled in the sense that, what is the answer to that question? What do we do when a child's home environment is so bad that it's antithetical to them being in a position in order to learn? Do we have the resources available to move a child out of an environment at their own choice, I might add, not at the choice of the state making the decision? Especially when someone is 14, 15 years, they pretty much, I think, are old enough to form a decision about how they really want to live their life. Do we have halfway houses for young people who've made that decision that they want to move on with their life and not necessarily live in their home environment? Do we have those type of resources in our community? Where do our young people go in order to get access and answers to that type of information? I don't see enough things being done in this space that would allow us to help our young people who want to make a decision to move forward in their lives. Where are our wraparound services that we can provide our children, which allows them to break free from the intergenerational trap of poverty, of hopelessness and helplessness in our own community? We've got to begin to look at these things and provide what we need. Because just as I talked about providing for the safety of our young people and trying to guide them in the right way to make the right decisions, we also have to provide the resources for our people, our young people who've made a decision that their home environment isn't what it needs to be, that they need to move into a different situation. And how do we create safe spaces? Once again, that word I keep using, safe spaces for our young people who want to take control of their lives. It is so important that we understand the full range of responsibilities. Responsibility of parents to their child, responsibility of child to his parent, responsibility of a teacher to a child, the responsibility of a teacher to a parent, the responsibility of a principal to a student, the responsibility of a principal to his parents, the responsibility of a principal to the Board of Education, the responsibility of the Board of Education to the people who elect them. There's so many layers of responsibilities that we have to engage in, and we have to engage, that we've got to create a much better mosaic for ourselves. Because what we're doing is that we're siloing ourselves into not having proper solutions to our problems. And so if a child wants to learn and they're getting themselves up to come to school, but they're going back in a bad home environment, where's their relief? How do we help them? No one has an answer to that. But we have to find answers for these questions, because these are the vexing issues on how we're going to fundamentally change who we are as a people in our own community. What is our responsibilities to ourselves? Where is our shared responsibility? You know, we live in a culture where it's all driven by the dollar. Everybody wants to be on top. But what I'm suggesting is that drive for that type of culture puts us in a very peculiar position because the emphasis on chasing the dollar and not necessarily providing the service that we need is something that we have to address. And until we address that issue, we can't get to deeper issues of personal responsibility. How do we address black-on-black crime? How do we deal with domestic violence? How do we deal with not wanting to acknowledge mental health issues in our own community? These are shared responsibilities that we have for one another. And if we don't share the responsibility and understand that we're all in this together, then we're never going to get out of the situation, because we'll constantly be hitting our heads on the wall trying to approach a problem in the same manner and expect a different result. That clearly is the definition of insanity, because we've got to have a much different climate and environment for ourselves in order to change the trajectory of who we are and how we exist in our own community. And so when I come back from my final segment, you know, we'll kind of put a pin on this, kind of put a nice little bow, talk about it some more, and hopefully come up with, I would say, some guideposts for decisions. Because I don't necessarily like to talk about an issue if I'm not prepared to answer and provide a framework for how we move forward. And so, again, my name is Anthony Adams. This is the We Detroit, We Deserve Better show, and we'll be right back after this station break.
Watch Anthony Adams, We Detroit, We Deserve Better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. And live stream on Facebook. We Detroit. We deserve better.
Hi, this is LaWanda.
This is RJ Watkins.
Coming to you to bring you some information about the #1 detox in the nation, Lemon Burn. Lemon Burn helps to turn the fat into fit. It's for you, a happier, healthier you. Because you know, healthy is the new beautiful. An all-natural way to improve your health. It promotes a healthy digestive system, attacks and reduces belly fat, as well as gives you energy. Need to get yours today. Call 313-868-6612.
Don't forget to exercise and eat right.
If you or someone you know is facing eviction and has a notice to quit or a court order summons, complaint, or judgment, there is help to avoid eviction. Call the Detroit Eviction Helpline at 866-313-2520 or visit DetroitEvictionHelp.com. The City of Detroit with the State of Michigan have eviction prevention programs to assist Detroit residents with financial assistance and legal representation. Again, Detroiters can call 866-313-2520 or visit www.DetroitEvictionHelp.com. That's 866-313-2520 or go online to DetroitEvictionHelp.com. Again, Detroiters can call 866-313-2520 or visit www.DetroitEvictionHelp.com. 866-313-2520. Get help today.
Watch Anthony Adams, We Detroit. We deserve better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. And live stream on Facebook. We Detroit. We deserve better.
Welcome back. This is Anthony Adams of the We Detroit, We Deserve Better show, a show where I discuss topics of interest to me as well as hopefully topics of interest to you. Today, my conversation is around personal responsibility. What does that mean? And so I've talked a lot about a lot of different things. I talked about responsibility that a parent has for their child. I talked about the responsibility that a child has to his parent. I've talked about the responsibility of adults in general to children in the neighborhood and what responsibilities they have. I've also talked about the shared responsibilities of what people have as it relates to education of our children, safety in our own community. And so I always like to end my conversations with kind of what I say are touchstones for how we move forward in this framework of personal responsibility. And so I guess I have to start off with saying that, the main personal responsibility is you have to yourself. You have a responsibility to ensure that you try to live your life in the right way, that you try to do the right things. Lord knows none of us are perfect, and we all have our flaws and we all have our faults. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your happiness. You're responsible for doing the things, if you're not happy, to get yourself happy. You have responsibility to get the help that you may need in order to deal with certain issues. That is your personal responsibility, because no one can control your life if you aren't engaged in trying to be responsible for yourself. It is a very tough environment that we live in, but we also have to understand that we are responsible for ourselves. We're responsible for our own happiness. That I can't really necessarily make you happy. You really have to make yourself happy. And so you have a responsibility, first and foremost, you have a responsibility to yourself. As it relates to a parent and a child, I think a parent has a responsibility to instill a good value system in their children. They have to provide for some level of respect and decency, because these qualities are important as you move in the broader world and knowing how to communicate and interface with people. How do you react when you're under stress? How do you deal with your own internal interpersonal issues? And so parents have responsibility to, I think, provide their children with a framework for how their values should be, what they should strive for, how they should live their life, how they should respect people. Again, I was lucky. I had a mother who believed in all of those things, who believed that you need to be respectful. You need to respect your elders, even oftentimes when they might be wrong, but you respect them anyway. And so a parent has a responsibility to instill the correct values. I think parents also have a responsibility to put their children in safe spaces and safe environments. That we need to make sure that whatever we're giving our children as gifts is kind of age appropriate. We don't want to give them something that's too far ahead of them from an age year perspective, because it takes a lot of things to exercise good judgment in how you drive a car, how you drive a go-kart, how you roll through the city in a moped. You're asking oftentimes young people to make adult decisions in their lives when they may not be necessarily equipped to do and make the right decision, because they haven't, quite frankly, had enough experience in living life in order to do what's necessary or what's appropriate. I think we also, from a perspective of our children, that our school system has a major piece of responsibility. I'm not diminishing the fact that our parents and our home life has to do the right thing. But when you're talking about sending your child spends more time in a school, technically speaking, than they do with their parents, because you're in school, 7-8 hours a day. Your kids are out playing with themselves. So they spend a lot more time away from you than they do with you. And so I'm saying that our school systems have a tremendous responsibility to provide the environment, to provide the resources, to provide the people to teach and to get engaged and involved in what needs to happen with our young people, because that is so important. And the problem oftentimes we find in education, especially in education in Detroit, is that it's under-resourced, that we don't have enough resources in our school system to do what's responsible, which is why we ended up, with years of state control, state diminution of value of education in our community. but we have young people who really don't understand civic responsibility, shared responsibility, because these programs of civics were not an essential part of what our education system should be. And so our schools have a tremendous responsibility, and we as adults have to ensure that our schools have the resources, which will require some level of reformation of funding of education in the city of Detroit. Make no mistake about it, the district is severely underfunded. It's a district that cannot put a dollar into its capital improvement project. And so how do we get that responsibility taken care of? Well, it is interesting now that the school district is going to be receiving, I think, close to $1 billion in federal funding because of the Recovery Act. We've got to make sure that those dollars are spent wisely. A $1 billion windfall should not be taken lightly. And there should be, I think, much more robust conversation about how that $1 billion is going to be spent. What types of enhancement programs are we going to provide for our young people who cannot read? What type of additional educational support are we going to provide our children who need a boost in their learning? What type of support and programming are we going to provide our young people who are reading at grade level but need to be challenged more? These are conversations that we need to start having now, because it'll be too late when the money gets here. The priorities will already be established. And I'm not saying that the board and the superintendent won't establish the right priorities, but I think in order to provide them with the assistance and information that they need, the parents need to be much more engaged in the process, because they have a responsibility that starts with, one, trying to educate their child in their own home, but two, making sure that the district does what it's supposed to do and providing the resources that our kids need. Because at the end of the day, I guess what I'm saying and suggesting is that we actually have a shared responsibility as amongst ourselves. That if we're going to live in the city, if we want the city to thrive, then it's up to us to do our fair share, which means that if I got to go outside my house and sweep my front patio off or pick up in front of my house, I do that, because that's my responsibility. It's my shared responsibility with my neighbors, the people who live in my community, because we're all locked and loaded and tied into this together, and we tied into one another. And I think the more we understand our shared responsibility, how we interact with one another, how we're responsible for our neighbors' well-being, then I think the better off we will be as a community, because we're accepting the challenge of understanding that your happiness in some respects is tied to my happiness. I can't make you happy, but it's certainly not my intent to make you unhappy. And I do the things necessary to help you move our community forward, move myself forward, provide a safe space in an environment for our kids in order to do what they need to do. At the end of the day, we're responsible for one another, but we have a shared responsibility as amongst each other. And we also have a shared responsibility to ensure that our neighbors' kids are safe and secure. If we can assist in providing them with help and support, we do that. I'll end on a story one time. I was in the barbershop, go to Marcus Ivers's barbershop down in Cadillac Square. And the guy was talking about his son had let another kid use his bike, but the kid didn't bring the bike back. And so the father went over with his son to the other house, and the other child's father was there present in the house. And it got into a really big, kind of nasty situation. And so when we were talking at the barbershop, I asked the guy was like, well, I'm not responsible for making sure nobody else's kid got a bike. I'm too busy working to make sure my kid has his own bike. And so what I said to him was that I said, the reason that the kid kept your son's bike was because he didn't have a bike. Now, I know that's not your responsibility, but there are a lot of bike stores across the city where they're selling used bikes, and you understood kind of this kid's situation. And so by going over to his house and confronting his father, all you really did was remind him that he didn't have the resources necessary to support his own child. And that could have been, it could have turned out into a bad situation because we see too much of that happening in the city of Detroit. And so what I suggested to him was that, maybe you could have spent $15, $20, found this kid a little bike that he could have ridden, and then not necessarily taking it to the child, but say, hey, look, I got a bike for you, but these are some things you need to do in order to get this bike. It would have created a much different climate instead of you being in confrontation with another man about reminding him of his poverty. We've always got to be conscious and be careful when we address issues like that. And so it's been a remarkable show from my perspective. We've had a chance to talk about personal responsibility. As always, I enjoy the conversation and look forward to being with you next week. So my name is Anthony Adams. This is the We Detroit, the We Deserve Better show, and I'll see you next week.
Watch Anthony Adams, We Detroit. We Deserve Better. Live on Mondays from 11 a.m. to noon on WHPR TV 33 Detroit. And live stream on Facebook. We Detroit. We deserve better.